friend, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you a couple of things that I think everyone should know before they begin learning how to hand letter. Now, if you have already begun, that's okay. I hope these tips will still be helpful for you. But the thing is, I think that when people start learning brush lettering or brush calligraphy without knowing these things, I think that it can be a little bit extra frustrating. You may look at your hand lettering and think that your letters are not looking the way that you wanted them or the way that you expected them to. You might look at those upstrokes and think they're kind of shaky, or that your transitions from thick to thin strokes just are not exactly what you wanted them to look like. You might think you need a different brush pen, or maybe even like you're just not cut out for hand lettering, and I don't want you to feel that way. So I really wanted to share a few of these things with you today. So let's jump right in. The first thing is the direction of your strokes. So you've probably heard me or somebody else say upstrokes and downstrokes or thick and thin strokes, and it can be kind of difficult to know which ones are which if you don't know this one thing, which was absolutely me when I first started hand lettering. I was just guessing which ones should be thick and which ones should be thin, and sometimes it turned out and sometimes it didn't. However, I think it's a much easier process to actually understand what you're doing versus just guessing like I was. I'll also make sure to let you know and link below where you can get the free worksheets that I'm using in this video. So the main thing when it comes to thick and thin strokes is to understand that when you are pulling the pen down towards yourself, you are creating a downstroke. The downstroke is typically going to be thicker than the upstroke, and you don't do this by turning your pen or twisting it to the side. You do this by applying a bit more pressure on your brush pen, and that's going to help you to create that thicker stroke. And then when you're pushing your pen towards the top of your paper, you're creating your upstroke, and that is the stroke that is going to be thinner. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thickness that I'm showing you here, but they should have a little bit of a variation. So once you've gotten the hang of how to make a thicker stroke with your brush pen and how to make a thinner stroke with your brush pen, we can move on to some drills that help us to practice using our brush pen. So there are a few main ones that you might see quite often. I'm going to show you more than this in this video, but here are a few main ones that can kind of help us to create most of the letters in our alphabet. So I recommend practicing these strokes to help you get control of your brush pen and to create some of the motions that we're going to create in our letters. So for example, if we take an oval and then an underturn and just kind of squish them together, we have a lowercase a. Same thing goes for many other letters, like here we have an underturn with a loop and then we have created a Y. So it can seem like learning an entire alphabet might be a little more tricky than it is, but when you break it down into individual strokes, it can be much easier. So I'm going to show you some more strokes that I think are great for practicing hand lettering, getting comfortable with using your brush pen, and that help you to create beautiful hand lettering. So these worksheets are actually free in my 7-day hand lettering course. If you have not joined that already, you can join that at howtohandletter.com/mini course, or I will link it in the description box below. But this mini course is more than just worksheets. It is 7 days of some of my best tips and tricks for helping you to create beautiful hand lettering. I get so much great feedback on that mini course. So if you have not already joined that, make sure to check that out. It is free and you can find that on my website or linked below. So one of the first things I want to mention is when you are creating some of these bigger strokes, sometimes it's easier, instead of moving your wrist back and forth or moving your hands or your fingers, sometimes it's kind of easier to anchor your pen and move your arm across the page instead of just twisting your wrist. Now, sometimes there's little movements that you might see me use my wrist for more. But a lot of times with these lines that are a little bit larger and that I want to stay really steady, I'm just more moving my arm up and down than I am moving my hand. And sometimes you'll see me move my wrist and then the line doesn't come out very nicely. So if you are struggling with making some of those big movements or keeping them steady and not having shaky lines, you can try to just move your arm up and down more rather than twisting your wrist. You'll also notice that some of these strokes aren't the typical basic strokes that you see. Some of them are kind of strange looking, and some of them are things that maybe go in a different letter, like in a different style. So I have created these drills to just help you learn to use your brush pen in some of the unique ways that you'll need it when you are doing brush lettering. So sometimes we are just kind of going up and around and curving around places and then going back and forth between those thick and thin strokes, and sometimes these movements can feel kind of awkward, especially if you're new to brush lettering. And so if you've just been using a brush pen at one thickness the whole time, or if you've not really practiced gradually going from a thin to a thick stroke, it might just feel really awkward, and that's okay. These are the drills that I recommend to help you get over that. So the more we do it, I think it starts to become like muscle memory. So when I'm hand lettering, I don't really have to think to like push hard on my downstrokes and lighten up as I go around that curve to come back up for an upstroke. It just kind of happens, and it's because I've been doing this for a really long time. And so I think if it's not kind of automatic for you, this is a really great place to start. And the other thing is, I think tracing is a really great way to do this, because if you're learning brush lettering for the first time, you're learning kind of two different things simultaneously. You are not only learning how to create this alphabet that maybe doesn't look like your everyday handwriting, but then you're also learning how to use a brush pen. And so it's a lot of different things to learn all at once. And so I think that tracing kind of takes the guesswork out of where your pen should go. And so you can just kind of follow that line, and your goal with these worksheets is just to get your thick and thin strokes in the right places. And like I said, once using your brush pen becomes kind of like second nature, then you can maybe focus a little bit more on your letters and trying to create like different styles of letters or switching things around. But I recommend kind of really getting comfortable with that brush pen before you worry too much about what your letters look like. So you might think that with a little bit of practice, your letters should look perfect and there should be no shaky strokes and the transitions are beautiful and smooth. And I just think that for most people, it doesn't happen that quickly, and that's completely okay. I would just focus first on getting those transitions from your thick and thin strokes to feel like second nature first, and then I would worry about the shape and formation of my letters. And the way that I think that you do that is by practicing drills like this with your brush pen. So some of them are a little bit more complicated, especially as we get through to the end of these, but there are some really simple ones too. So start with just that upstroke and that downstroke, and you can practice that over and over until it feels comfortable, and then maybe move on to that overturn and that underturn, so like that U-shaped curve. And then when that feels comfortable, you can maybe move on to the loops and the ovals and all the different things. But I guess what I'm saying is just don't worry if your hand lettering doesn't look the way you want it to look if you're still trying to figure out your brush pen. So if you want to practice these along with me, again, you can join my free 7-day hand lettering course. You can find it at howtohandletter.com/mini course. I will also leave a playlist here for a bunch of videos that I think will help you if you are a beginner trying to learn how to hand letter. So I hope this was helpful for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you over in that next video.